So, Dragonflight has finally launched, and with it, an adventure to the long-forgotten shores of the Dragon Isles, an area of Azeroth that we've never seen before. With a measure of some reserved curiosity, I decided to step back into the world of Azeroth with its latest expansion, interested in seeing if there could be a return to form for the MMO after the Shadowlands expansion. And so far, I would be cautiously optimistic. This caution has not come from feelings of glazed nostalgia, however, from the general feel of the expansion so far, and I'd put my feelings down to two specific elements that have come with Dragonflight. Those two elements are the introduction of the dragon riding system as a mechanic, and the changes to factions and the reputation grind, one of these things being completely new to the game, and the other simply being a rework of a currently existing system. Whilst I won't get into too many details with the entirety of the expansion, with such elements as questing, lore, and other shenanigans that you can get up to, I'd like to take some time to discuss the two areas which I've mentioned that I believe have brought significant changes for the better. It may be with these further developments into the expansion that we may see other elements that may trump these, but I'll let you know my thoughts on that when they come up. But let's jump into it with everyone's new favourite form of aerial transport. Dragon riding is the newest addition to the fabled expansion gimmicks that the recent expansions have provided. Legion had artifacts, Battle for Azeroth had Azerite, and Shadowlands had the Covenant system, for example. But Dragonflight's gimmick is certainly a little more on the nose than these previous systems that provided you with your gimmick in this case. By progressing through the main story to a point, players will be eventually given access to a new set of mounts that enable dragon riding. These mounts, looking good for the expansion's aesthetics, enable players to soar through the skies of Dragon Isles in a very real sense. Players are started off with limited abilities, based on the vigour of their mount and generally from where they set off. Travel itself now feels like a bit of a mini-game, wherein managing one's ability to stay aloft whilst also navigating through the various obstacles and terrain in these areas. Players are encouraged to explore whilst flying with the introduction of sigils throughout the world that will increase their skills and abilities. Upgrading is much like a talent tree for your dragon riding prowess, and hunting for these sigils is a great way to getting to enjoy the new landscapes of the Isles firsthand. Where this new mechanic shines, however, is that of the various races throughout the Isles, where you are timed to progress through a course as quickly as possible. These courses not only show a good design of the dragon riding mechanic, but also provide the welcome benefit in the form of supplies. With the more advanced courses on offer, players are able to take on a course again, but with more difficult trials and the aspect of obstacles in their way whilst doing so. In terms of the expansion gimmicks thus far, I feel that this is the best one in my opinion. Not only does it deal with that pesky Pathfinder achievement, it also allows players to traverse the landscape of the Isles without difficulty if enough exploration is done, and in a unique way. Not only that, it factors into all other elements of gameplay in the Isles, which is why I feel that it's probably one of the best expansion-based mechanics that we've seen so far. But while dragon riding has been the main draw to this expansion, in my opinion, the other element I would like to highlight today is that of the factional updates and their changes since the Shadowlands expansion. Whilst not the most exciting point, the adjustments to world quests and the ease of going to them in different areas by dragon riding allows players to access these world quests and, by proxy, reputation goals in an easier fashion. All the factions have reputation tiers rather than the traditional system of being friendlied, honoured or exalted, and is similar to how the Covenants worked with renown in Shadowlands. However, their general feeling is that it's somewhat easier to gain access to these reputation gains than in the previous expansion with renown. Maybe this is an element of the dragon riding mechanic, or the fact that many of the zone questlines are now focused on providing you with the first tiers of reputation gain whilst unlocking them for future use. Factions, of course, have their own reputation tiers and vendors. But this new system differs to the fact that Shadowlands was inherently focused on the Covenants as they were tied into the wider arching narrative. In Dragonflight, it feels like they've freed up the wider narrative rather than locking it to a specific faction, like what we had to endure during the Covenant questlines. I think with the return to an older but altered style of reputations and the way that players can now interact with the potential narrative is good. It allows players to log in without having to consistently feel like they need to meet daily requirements, and leaves the reputation process, at this point, to be an optional one. And by potentially keeping the narrative separate to reputations, we can hopefully avoid the situation where in Shadowlands, people were locked out of their quests just because they missed a potential smidge or gain during the previous week. But after reputation grinds and flying dragons, What is it I feel about Dragonflight in these first few weeks? Well, it's certainly been a fun few weeks or so of getting to grips and enjoying the content the game now has to offer, but I'd rather not get hung up on the initial excitement and try to set some reasonable expectations. Dragon riding has certainly set an impact so far. For an expansion mechanic, its initial elements and the ability to traverse zones in a quicker fashion is enjoyable, given how previous expansions have not given you the ability to fly initially at all. However, it is due diligence to note that the elements of dragon riding can be done fairly quickly, especially when it comes to dragon sigils. You will also find that the initial rounds of races could potentially be done easy, but may find some difficulty with the more advanced courses. Once these are all done, however, the mechanic may feel slightly trivial with the full talent line expanded upon for dragon riding itself, but it will be interesting to see if they add more content using this mechanic, or if it's going to have an impact in further areas. Reputation grinds and your reputation system are naturally a draw for keeping players engaged in a longer term sense. The new factions in Dragon Isles are interesting as far as they can be with the new expansion, and their activities are so far in keeping with a wide variety of random tasks that one may be able to do. Whether you find this grind or not to be interesting, the ease of earning it so far has been nice, and it has not felt overbearing or overly necessary at this point. It now feels that this element is now suited to all those who wish to do it, as much or as little as possible. And this is all without getting to the myriad of other elements, such as dungeoneering and endgame content, profession updates with the new quality system, and a whole host of other features that have been implemented with this expansion. It is with these reasons that if I had to be cautiously optimistic, I would say that Dragonflight is a step in the right direction for World of Warcraft and how the game used to feel. Should this expansion continue to go in the right direction with further content and patch releases being of a similar quality and style, I could argue that it would start to repair the damage that has been done to the game's reputation for the past few years, and may start to bring people who have become disenfranchised with WoW back into the game. However, with that being said, what is your own experience of Dragonflight so far? Do you have any comments, opinions, or likes on the matter? Please feel free to leave them down below and let me know your thoughts. But until next time, take care, and if you are, I hope you enjoy the world of Azeroth once more with the newest expansion.